The digestive system. Now, when I first thought about this video, I thought the best thing to do is for me to actually eat something and sort of talk about the process of, where it goes next. But then I thought the ending is going to be a bit grim, so I'm just going to talk about it and we can sort of simulate it. Well, not the ending, but you know what I mean. So, when you eat something, you put it in your mouth and you chew. And that chewing action, we refer to that as mastication. So be careful how you say that word. Mastication. The chewing action releases saliva. And inside the saliva, we've got an enzyme. And enzymes basically break things down and speed up chemical reactions. So we've got this particular one, amylase, breaks down the carbohydrates and starts to turn them into glucose. So if you take a piece of bread, put it in your mouth, and actually do this, pause the video, go get some bread, do this, and just start to notice the sweetness that you taste in your mouth, and that will be the amylase already acting on the carbs and turning them into glucose. So that's your saliva. The saliva also just softens and moistens the food, so obviously making it pass through your pharynx much easier, which is the next bit. So after mastication and saliva, it goes through this opening here, your throat, which we call the pharynx. It passes down into this long tube that runs sort of alongside your trachea, I guess. Long tube called the esophagus. And the esophagus does something called peristalsis, where it basically contracts and relaxes and pushes the food down. So it's squashing the food, pushing it down. Then we get down into your stomach. And in the stomach, we've got a few things going on. We've got some enzymes that are also breaking down the fats and the proteins. So we've got lipase, trypsin, protease, all that sort of stuff. It's breaking down the proteins and the fats. And then we've also got something called bile, which isn't actually produced in the stomach. It's produced in the liver and stored in the gallbladder. But what the bile does is it emulsifies the fat. If you ever get some fat and you put it, something else you can do, pause the video, go get some fat, put it into a glass and just try and mix it with the water. It won't, it will just be like a glob of fat and it won't mix with the water. So bile emulsifies the fat so it can then mix with the water. And that's important because we want to then absorb that into our blood. So we've got the bile, we've got the enzymes, and we've got another thing called hydrochloric acid. And hydrochloric acid kills the bacteria. So we get any sort of bacteria that's in that food. Hydrochloric acid kills it off, so we can then transmit it safely into our blood. So we go from stomach now into what's called the small intestine. And the small intestine has these things called villi, which, I don't know, I always kind of picture as like little hands or just run the lining of the intestine that grab hold of the nutrients, and then that's where the nutrients kind of are absorbed. So the small intestine will absorb loads of nutrients via their little villi. It then, what's left, goes into the large intestine, and the large intestine will absorb the remaining nutrients, but also it will take the water out of the food. So at this point, we're talking about it's all liquid. So that liquid is then drawn out of the food by the large intestine. So then we're left with something that should be pretty solid. That's the idea anyway. And then it comes out your bum, which is technically called the opening is called your anus. And that's it really. That's the journey. That's your digestive system.